morning, good afternoon, good evening. Mnangagwa never ceases to amaze me. How did we end up with such a man as president? It's a question that I keep asking myself again and again. In this video circulating on social media, it really speaks volumes.
And Your Excellency, some of these people coming from the diaspora, you have seen them demonstrating at our embassies in South Africa or consulates in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, even in London, where certain busybodies of some of these people will be denigrating their own country. What do you say to them?
We are a democracy. Those who have grievances against their country, they are allowed to express their grievances. And they will not worry about that. But most importantly, they should come back home and they help us resolve those grievances which they see. They can be resolved when they are outside the country.
The sheer irrational of
even in London.
That argument is undeniable. So these people left the country, millions of them, let's be honest, millions of Zimbabweans have left the country either as economic and or political refugees. Now they're being told, oh, you should come back home and tell us what your grievances are and we will resolve them. Well, they left the country because the grievances were there. Why didn't you address them? Why did you let the economy deteriorate? Why the political oppression? Those are the grievances. They existed and they are the ones that forced them to leave the country. And now it's appearing as if to say they went out of the country, there were no grievances at all. It's only when they were outside the country that the grievance came up. Or you don't even know of these grievances yourself. So you have the people in the diaspora have got to come back and tell you the grievances. The whole argument is so pathetic, unbelievable. Ben.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining. You know, the Zimbabwe situation is well documented. You can, go onto different international institution websites and you will hear the same story: human rights abuses, economic hardships, and everything. And they also go the extra mile of even giving the solutions to the problem. But knowing ZANU-PF, they never did anything about it. So it's not a matter of, come let us hear your grievances. He knows the grievances that are there already. And besides, if things were okay in your country, Mr. President, you wouldn't be having millions upon millions of people living in neighboring countries. For example, over 3 million people are in South Africa. That is not normal if a country is well and up to do. So you don't need people to come and talk about it. It's well documented already. And besides, it's not talking ill about a country. It's a known fact Zimbabwe is a failed state. It's a case study in many institutions of learning about Zimbabwe.
Well, one of the reasons why millions of Zimbabweans have left the country is the economic collapse. The unemployment situation in Zimbabwe has been 80% plus for the last 20 years or more. And one of the reasons why the economy has collapsed is the regime's failure to deliver basic services. The funny part of it is, even Mnangagwa cannot pretend that he is not aware of some of these serious problems, like power cuts. Here is a scene that happens not so many moons ago, just to remind him.
Saka iko zvino magetsi avako, there's no more load shedding. Saka vachiwenga kana munhu akabuya achiti nyama yabora ine madzake, muti ngave naye nenyama yabora tigomupa tsva. Kasongo yeye mumbali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala ubo yeye kasongo mbona wewe kasongo mbona wewe mumbali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala ubo yeye.
Amazing. Here is an individual denying that we have no problem with power cuts. How many times has he told the nation that the regime has sorted out the power problems? Not only are we now able to generate enough power to meet our own national needs, but we'll be exporting it. And yet again and again, the nation has been forced into power cuts. Yes, many people out there are relying on solar panels. But if you're talking of industrialization of the nation, you need industrial power generation, reliable. You cannot have big companies start looking at having to come up with installations to generate enough power for their needs. That is not going to happen. Zimbabwe had industries that were supplying the region with quality products. And many of those industries have since closed or are operating at bare minimum capacity. That is the reality. That is the economic meltdown that forced the millions of Zimbabweans to leave the country. And those problems should have been resolved by now. And to suggest that somehow these people must come back home for them to be resolved is pathetic. Because we've got millions of Zimbabweans who have remained in the country for whatever reasons. And they are facing those hardships. 49% of Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe today are living in abject poverty. They've been there all the time. Why have you not addressed those problems then?
Now, with the problem with lying and continuously lying is that you yourself, the liar, you end up believing your own lies. And sometimes it takes reality to slap you in the face to get back to what is really going on. You know, I can give an example of the 2023 elections. After the 2023 elections, observer missions that had come to observe how we conducted our elections and to mark it according to international standards that are set, came up with reports, and in those reports, they said that Zimbabwean elections were not free, fair, and credible. They were so below international standards, such that they did not even measure up to our own constitutional requirements. Now, that was something to talk about because it was an embarrassment. But this same Mnangagwa that is sitting right there at State House said he doesn't care about what was said. He doesn't care that we did not meet international standards. We did not even respect the Constitution. He labeled it as Ndeshavo. So if you have a man that will say, such things to important institutions that Zimbabwe belongs to, that Zimbabwe subscribes to, what more you and I? Do you really think that he's going to listen to any of our grievances, even if we do come back home? The answer is no. He's just saying it just because he's used to it. The guy is a liar. You cannot reason with somebody that is delusional, somebody that is not, speaking the facts, somebody that is not living the reality. Like I said earlier, if you find that you have 3 million Zimbabweans and over in your next door country, and they've become a burden to your next door neighbor, like in your children, every time when it's lunchtime, they are going to the neighbor's house. They're going to play next to the neighbor. It shows there's something wrong with what is inside that household. Zimbabwe has become a burden to all countries because we are a failed state. But then individuals like Mnangagwa and the interviewer Ruben Baru, they don't see it that way. You cannot reason with somebody that, is not truthful, somebody that is, delusional from reality. It's impossible.
Vana vakatuka ZANU-PF kana ini ndonyanyisa kufara kuita zvakanaka. Ukavona vavengi vako vachikurumbidza unenge uchikanganisa. Ukavona vachiti ZANU-PF yakaipa, farai. You are doing great things for your country. Hongu takaita maelections edu kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelection arafamba zvakanaka ndezvavo.
The truth of the matter is, Mnangagwa does not have to wait for those in the diaspora to come back home to tell him something is wrong. There are millions of Zimbabweans in the country today who have been telling him that things are not going on well. And he has not been listening. Many Zimbabweans are trying to organize a peaceful protest on the 31st of July to protest the recent passing of this Constitution Amendment Bill number 3. There is no doubt that that amendment bill was steamrolled onto the nation. The nation was never given any meaningful say in the process, but that does not surprise anyone who really has been following Zimbabwean politics. If the regime rigged the 2023 elections, blatantly rigged the 2023 elections, it was naive to even believe that they would fail to rig the Constitutional Amendment Bill. And so they did. The tragedy is the millions of Zimbabweans who left the country because of the political turmoil and repression and the lack of investment in the country. When they look at this Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3 being passed, they resign in despair because they know that it is a political disaster as well as an economic one. Everybody else with any brain would immediately see this passing of this Constitutional Amendment Bill as yet another attempt by the regime to consolidate its dictatorial powers. When the solution should be, if we are serious about solving our economic and political crisis, we should be ending the dictatorship, not consolidating it. And yet that is exactly what he's doing. There is now talk of Mnangagwa, with the passing of this Constitution Amendment Bill, having cleared the path for him to become life president. I won't put any money on him failing to do so. That is the sort of thing he would do, because that is the sort of thing the regime has been doing for the last 46 years. Ever since the country's independence in 1980, ZANU-PF has been preoccupied with consolidating its iron grip on power at the expense of the good of the nation. That is the truth. And that is where we are as a nation. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
You know, I'm not particularly disappointed in the whole video, but my disappointment is that, we as Zimbabweans have given the likes of Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF, the ability to say we are a democratic nation. Yet we know fully well that Zimbabwe is not a democracy. But they have that power because we have continuously participated in rigged elections and granted them that legitimacy. We have given them that power to say that. Without our participation in rigged elections, they cannot utter those words. They cannot brag to the world. This is where the disappointment is. A lot of people out there still do not understand why Zimbabwe cannot move forward beyond this ZANU-PF, thuggery. We have been sustaining ZANU-PF. We are the oxygen that ZANU-PF requires to survive. No, in Shona they say yatsika msheshe yama. By us just participating because it's any election and it becomes acceptable, we are not only perpetuating our own suffering, but giving the life to ZANU-PF. So we are the cause of what we are today. We are the primary cause, you and I. And we can stop this. We can stop this madness. We can stop sustaining ZANU-PF by putting our foot down and saying, as long as there are no reforms, we are not going to be participating in any shame of an election. That is a massive, massive step forward. And ZANU-PF does not want to hear that because it threatens their life. We need to make bold stances. Otherwise, we're going to be blundering from pillar to post, blaming each other, fighting each other, demonstrating, and getting beaten up for that. The choice is ours. Thank you.
Let me state this for the record. The hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans we have retained from South Africa, it could be millions. That one is not very sure. After all, there are believed to be over 3 million Zimbabweans in that country. They have returned to Zimbabwe because they are running away from the threat of the xenophobia attacks. The threat is real. The attacks have happened before. And they were right to take them seriously. They are not returning to Zimbabwe because the economic and political situation there has improved. It has not. In fact, many of them know the situation is worse now than when they left. They are just caught between the rock and the hard place. Many of them will no doubt be in Zimbabwe and they will not be able to leave because leaving your own country to a foreign land is not an easy choice, or for whatever other reasons. It is a pity that the nation is being put in this really impossible situation. We talked of power cuts. Many of those people who have already retained from South Africa will no doubt, as we speak, be experiencing some of those power cuts. And many more would have been, was it not for the fact that many Zimbabweans now are relying on solar panels for power supply to their own homes. But when it comes to industry, there's no power. And this is why many of them who return to Zimbabwe will join the mountain of unemployed. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. I would just like to close with a reminder of Mnangagwa sitting in the dark in Parliament. The reality of power cuts in Zimbabwe.
Saka iko zvino magetsi avako, there's no more load shedding. Saka vachiona kana munhu akabuya achiti nyama yabora inema dzake muti ngave naye nenyama yabora tigomupa tsva
kasongo yeye mombali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala ugo yeye kasongo mbona wewe kasongo mbona wewe mombali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala ugo yeye.
Millions of Zimbabweans are returning home to a failed state. A nation that in 1980 had the potential of becoming the South Korea of Africa has become one of the poorest countries in the region and is now a burden to the rest of the region. That is truly tragic. Good night.